Can you believe it? Beneath the dazzling splendor of the Forbidden City, where emperors ruled, lies a dark secret, a hidden prison. The life of a concubine wasn't a fairy tale. It was a brutal fight for survival, where women were turned into pawns, scheming and struggling for a scrap of favor from the emperor. This is the Qing dynasty. Forget about flowing gowns and dreamy tea parties. Picture the stench of blood masked by incense, fake smiles hiding sharp knives. Doubt. Thousands of young women from across China were locked in this gilded cage. They weren't chosen for love, but as tools, breeding machines, and symbols of the emperor's power. Mei Lin, a gentle and innocent Manchu girl, stepped into this world. She thought she'd change her family's fortunes and bring them honor. She had no idea she was walking into a swamp. The Forbidden City was its own universe. The empress reigned supreme, and concubines were ranked in 8 strict tiers. From powerful noble consorts to lowly attendants, each rank was a shackle, offering privileges but sealing your fate. To survive, you had to climb. To climb, you had to crush others. That was the game. How did they live? In luxury. Hardly every day was a performance. They painted their faces to hide exhaustion. They memorized etiquette to avoid a single misstep that could cost their lives. They waited for the emperor like predators stalking prey, out of love, but for survival. One wrong move, one careless word, one displeasing glance, and your status could vanish. Favor could be stripped away. Even death wasn't unthinkable. Harem was a battlefield without gunfire, where the strong devour the weak was the only truth. Jealousy, envy, plots, and lies, these were the heartbeat of their daily lives. It was so ruthless that cruelty became ordinary. Mei Lin entered the concubine selection with bright, hopeful eyes, dreaming of romance. But she was just one of thousands. Judged like livestock, her walk, her voice, even her moles. A single flaw, and the palace gates would slam shut forever. Somehow, her quiet charm caught the selector's eyes. Her family celebrated, thinking it was glory. They didn't know their daughter had been thrown into hell. When the Forbidden City's gates closed behind Mei Lin, they locked her into a world she couldn't have imagined. Her innocence, it wasn't a strength, it was bait. Will this fragile girl survive? Or will the merciless machine of the harem swallow her, turning her into another tainted concubine like so many before and after her? This is only the beginning. Mei Lin embarked on a harrowing journey through the Shunu selection. A ritual held every 3 years where hundreds of young women were scrutinized down to the tiniest detail: beauty, intellect, and lineage. The Shenwu Gate, a threshold crossed only by those marked by fate, loomed before her. Imagine it. Hundreds of girls, from pampered noble daughters to minor officials' children, lined up under the scorching sun of the Forbidden City. Each carried her own beauty, her own dreams, but all shared a crippling fear. This wasn't a beauty pageant. It was a test of their very humanity. Mei Lin stood among them, her heart pounding. She endured invasive physical exams and relentless behavioral tests. Every gesture, glance, and word was judged against impossible standards. Cold-eyed eunuchs glided past, scribbling notes. They weren't looking for a wife, but a breeding tool and a symbol of imperial might. Mei Lin learned to mask her anxiety, projecting calm while her insides churned. Stand tall. Face serene, voice soft but clear, barked the instructions. A smile too bright could be deemed improper. A gaze too sharp might seem arrogant. Perfection was mandatory, yet no one was truly perfect. Mei Lin watched girls dismissed for a faint scar, a slightly hoarse voice, or a misplaced mole. The cruelty was chilling, and it dawned on her. Her life, from this moment, was no longer her own. Through natural grace and rare wit, Mei Lin was chosen. Brief joy gave way to awe as she entered the Forbidden City. Its grandeur, intricate carvings, vibrant, tiled roofs, vast gardens with lotus ponds, and stone bridge surpassed her wildest dreams. But its beauty came with suffocating control. Life in the palace was an endless cycle of learning and fear. Mei Lin struggled to master complex rituals, when to bow, how to address each rank, which robes to wear for each occasion. Every move was watched by stern eunuchs and senior concubines. Even meals were a test: how much to eat, what to choose, where to sit, all dictated by rules. Your every gesture must embody the dignity of an imperial model, snapped her strict governess. Maylin felt like a puppet, every motion engineered. For perfection, she longed for the carefree afternoons running through fields at home. Now, even walking in the courtyard followed a prescribed rhythm. Personal freedom, once taken for granted, is now an unimaginable luxury. Among the senior concubines, one stood out. Noble consort Lan Dung. A veteran of the harem, Lan Dung held a formidable position. Her appearance blended flawless elegance with an icy edge. Draped in the finest silks and glittering jewels, she wore a constant smile, but her eyes betrayed sharp calculation. Maylin sensed Lan Dung as a rival. The consort's confidence, subtle arrogance, and commanding presence contrasted starkly with Maylin's timid steps in this maze of power. Lan Dung embodied harem survival, a woman who wielded beauty, intellect, and ruthlessness as weapons. Maylin often caught Lan Dung's cold gaze during ceremonies or tea gatherings, not friendly, but appraising, measuring her potential as a threat. With a survivor's instinct, Maylin felt the danger. She knew the harem's true battles were silent wars of wit. With ambushes hidden behind velvet curtains, sleepless nights found Maylin staring at the lonely moon above the palace. Roofs. Could she survive this place? Or would she become another Lan Dung, trading her soul for survival? She had come seeking glory, but now craved only peace. The Forbidden City, for all its splendor, was becoming a prison of the mind. Then during an art review, the Emperor's gaze fell on Maylina. Fleeting look, a faint smile. She didn't yet know that this spark of favor wasn't a blessing, but a deadly curse. It placed her in the crosshairs of unseen enemies, especially one pair of icy eyes watching from afar, those of noble consort Lan Dung. The real war had just begun. The Emperor's gaze was a rare ray of light in Maylin's life, elevating her from obscurity to the rank of honored lady, a modest title, but one that granted her fleeting moments of favor. She was given a smaller palace, a few more maids, and, most crucially, the chance to stand before the Son of Heaven. Her heart, still clinging to traces of innocence, fluttered at this rare attention. Perhaps, she thought, this was the start of the fairy tale she had dreamed of. But in the harem, favor was not a blessing. It was a deadly curse. Every glint of imperial affection drew countless envious eyes, sharp as blades, and no one felt the threat of this newly bloomed flower more keenly than noble consort Lan Dung. Lan Dung, with her refined elegance and radiant smile, launched her campaign. Not with violence or crude words, but with cunning, venomous precision. Her compliments were daggers dipped in honey, sweet yet laced with poison. Honored Lady Maylin is truly blessed to catch His Majesty's eye so soon. But I fear such great fortune can sometimes turn to misfortune. Or your beauty stirs envy, but innocence, I worry, is easily exploited in this palace. Words cloaked in concern sowed doubt and unease in Maylin's mind, while subtly signaling to other concubines the emergence of a new threat. Lan Dung worked to isolate Maylin from potential allies. She deftly arranged for Maylin's trusted maids to be reassigned or punished for trivial infractions. Small gifts and tea invitations from other concubines dwindled. Maylin felt like a caged bird, the doors of friendship and support slamming shut. She caught judgmental glances and heard whispers trailing her every step. The isolation was deliberate, calculated. Then the true nightmare began. Maylin grew weak, an unnatural fatigue seeping into her bones. At first, it was mild headaches, then dizziness, nausea, and finally, persistent high fevers. The imperial physicians were summoned, but their vague diagnosis of palace ailment, blamed on damp air and stress, rang hollow. Maylin knew this was no ordinary sickness. One evening, as she struggled to sip a steaming bowl of tea brought by a maid, the jade comb her mother had given her, a cherished talisman of purity and love, slipped from her hand and shattered on the cold stone floor. Crack. The sound tore through the silent night. The comb, a symbol of her innocence, lay in two pieces. At that moment, a faint, almost imperceptible scent wafted from the tea. A horrifying realization struck Maylin. Her tea had been poisoned. Death was stalking her, slowly draining her strength and hope. She understood she was being systematically poisoned with a swift toxin, but a cruel, gradual one that eroded body and spirit, leaving its victim to waste away in agony. Such tactics were all too common in the harem, a way to eliminate rivals without leaving clear evidence. Confined to her palace, Maylin lived in paralyzing fear. She could trust no one. Even her closest maids might be Landung's spies. It felt like a trapped animal awaiting the Reaper's scythe. Her fear grew with each passing day as she realized she controlled nothing. The filthy life she had once heard whispered about was no longer a distant tale, but a brutal reality, encircling her. The harem's hierarchy, once a ladder to climb, now felt like a vast spiderweb tightening around her, each thread a rule, a ritual, a watching eye. The silks and splendor surrounding her turned meaningless, even terrifying. Maylin's initial ambitions to rise in rank, to bring honor to her family, had evaporated. All that remained was a constant dread and a single desperate wish to survive. She was trapped in a world where every smile could hide a dagger, every sweet word a poisoned arrow. To live, Maylin realized, she must learn to play this deadly game more except being devoured. Then a shocking rumor swept the harem. The Empress's sacred seal, a vital emblem of her authority and the dynasty's stability, had vanished. Date. Its loss was not just a scandal, but an ill omen. The Forbidden City buzzed with tension, and Maylin, despite her illness, felt a chill run down her spine. She sensed the theft was no accident, and she, frail and vulnerable, would likely be the next pawn thrust into the storm. Landung's lethal game was entering its most dangerous phase. And Maylin knew there was no turning back. The Forbidden City plunged into chaos when the imperial seal vanished, a crime tantamount to treason. Fear gripped every corner of the palace. Who would dare steal the ultimate symbol of the emperor's authority? Enraged, the emperor ordered the harem sealed. With everyone under suspicion and a rigorous investigation launched, this was the moment noble consort Landung had been waiting for. Seizing her chance, she executed her final, most ruthless plan. With cunning honed over years in the harem, she planted false evidence in Maylin's palace. A delicate silk cloth, unmistakably marked with the seal's wax, hidden so carefully that only a thorough search would uncover it. The evidence was designed to make Maylin's guilt undeniable. A grand inquisition convened in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, presided over by the Empress Dowager, the empire's second most powerful figure. This was no mere trial, but a gruesome spectacle where a person's fate hung in the balance. Dozens of officials, eunuchs, and senior concubines gathered to witness the drama of accusation and defense. Maylin, frail from her prolonged illness, was escorted before the court. She knelt, her hair disheveled, her face pale from sickness and terror. Her mind reeled. She knew she'd been framed, but how could she prove her innocence when all evidence pointed to her? Her pleas sounded weak, drowned out by the weight of the accusations and, above all, Landung's calculated testimony. Landung stood to the side, feigning sorrow and regret. I cannot believe honored Lady Maylin would commit such a heinous act, yet the evidence is undeniable. I beseech your majesty and the Empress Dowager to judge fairly. Her voice was soft, but each word struck Maylin like a blade. Landung described in detail how she discovered the silk, noting Maylin's suspicious behavior in recent days. Her chilling composure convinced the court of her truthfulness. Maylin was desperate. She saw the Empress Dowager's cold stare, the Emperor's disappointed expression, and the judgmental, scornful looks from other concubines. Demotion or execution, both were horrific fates. A chilling dread enveloped her as if death itself beckoned The filthy life she had feared now stood starkly before her. She was a pawn, pushed toward destruction with no means to fight back, just as the Empress Dowager prepared to pronounce judgment. A small, elderly figure stepped forward from the ranks of eunuchs. It was old Zhang, a quiet, often overlooked eunuch, who swept the obscure corners of Landung's palace. Though typically silent and tasked with menial work, Zhang had silently witnessed Landung's schemes over the years. He knelt, trembling but resolute, and presented an object. A shattered porcelain doll, a humble gift Mei Lin had given him during a garden stroll. When she noticed him working and offered him a pastry, that seemingly worthless gift became a fateful. "Key, Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, this old servant begs to speak. A secret lies within this doll." The court buzzed with astonishment. Zhang gently pried open the broken doll. Inside its hollow core, hidden carefully, was a small silk cloth stained with dried blood. This is the cloth, noble consort. Landung used to wipe her mouth after mixing poison into honored Lady Mei Lin's tea. Zhang's voice quavered but held firm. He recounted in detail how Landung ordered a maid to lace Mei Lin's tea with poison, and how she wiped her hands. On this cloth, the blood-stained silk bore not only traces of the toxin but also tiny, handwritten instructions from Landung to her matavidance Zhang had secretly preserved. After glimpsing it, the truth exploded into the hall of supreme harmony. Stunning. All present. Whispers and shocked glances turned toward Landung. Her composed facade crumbled. Her face paled, her eyes widened in panic, her usual poise gone. The Empress Dowager's fury was palpable. The Emperor was aghast. Judgment fell swiftly on Landung, merciless and final. Stripped of all titles, reduced to a commoner, she was banished to the cold palace, her life condemned to eternal disgrace and solitude. Her ruthless ambition, which had seemed unstoppable, ultimately destroyed her. Mei Lin, declared innocent, rose trembling. She had survived, but the cost of her survival was steep. She had seen the rotten cruelty lurking beneath the palace's glittering veneer. The shattered porcelain doll had saved her, but the wounds in her soul were beyond repair. Mei Lin lived. But was she still the same Mei Lin? Or had the horrors she endured transformed her? The answer would shape the rest of her life in this gilded, seemingly eternal cage. The brutal ordeal reshaped Mei Lin. She survived, but at the cost of her innocence, which was forever lost. Her eyes, once clear as mountain springs, now carried a profound depth, tinged with melancholy, the mark of someone who had weathered storms. Her ambitions no longer centered on chasing the emperor's fleeting favor or climbing the harem's rigid hierarchy. Instead, she found purpose in small acts of kindness, deeds that seemed trivial in the calculating world of the palace, but gave her life meaning. Mei Lin devoted herself to guiding younger maids and concubines, newcomers, who entered this labyrinth, with hopeful, yet fearful eyes. She shared hard-won lessons on survival, teaching them caution and how to protect themselves in this silent battlefield. She didn't instruct them in scheming, but in preserving their integrity, holding on to a shred of conscience in a world steeped in corruption. She also found solace in tending the imperial gardens. Each flower and leaf, fragile and delicate, was nurtured like the vulnerable spirit she once was in this vast gilded cage. The scent of blossoms and the chirping of birds became a balm for her soul, healing the wounds of months spent in fear and manipulation. Meanwhile, noble consort Landung, her former adversary, paid a heavy price. Stripped of all titles, reduced to a commoner, and confined indefinitely to the desolate cold palace, she faded into obscurity. Bereft of power and attendance, she was left with only solitude and gnawing regret. Her blind ambition had been her undoing. Landung's fate served as a stark warning of the cost of pursuing power at the expense of humanity and morality. Mei Lin's journey from a naive girl thrust into the treacherous harem to a resilient, mature woman forged by tragedy, illuminated a harsh truth about the harem's dual nature, a place of unparalleled splendor and profound suffering. Survival demanded not only cunning, but also resilience and compassion. Resilience had carried Mei Lin through the shadow of death, and compassion gave her a new path. One more meaningful than competing for favor. Though Mei Lin's story unfolded centuries ago, its echoes linger through the cold corridors of the Forbidden City and resonate even today, posing profound questions for us all. What is the true cost of ambition? Is it worth sacrificing conscience, happiness, or even life for fleeting power and prestige? In our modern world, are we unwittingly trapped in a relentless race, turning ourselves into concubines in a different kind of war, trading inner peace for superficial material gains? And a deeper question, can freedom exist within a cage? No matter how ornately gilded, Mei Lin discovered a different kind of freedom of the soul, found in choosing how to live and treat others, despite her physical confinement. This inner liberty, unbound by the chains of power or external control, became her salvation. As we reflect on the lives of the women in ancient China's harem, we are not merely hearing a historical tale. We are invited to examine our own pursuits of power and status in the modern age. The sacrifices they endured, the battles they fought, do they persist in different forms in our lives? Are we willingly stepping into our own gilded cages, accepting a filthy existence normalized by the pursuit of goals that may not bring true fulfillment? Mei Lin's story is a timeless echo, reminding us of the supreme value of humanity, freedom, and compassion, qualities that no amount of gold or power can ever buy.